So, Francesca, do you believe that it has been almost a year?
Yeah, it feels really unreal to be here today, May 22nd, 2025, right here in this venue.
Yeah, the actors, the panelists, the audience, the atmosphere in this very same venue that day.
And yeah, what privilege it is to return 1 year later in a same space.
So today we are here and we are revisiting the MoralPLai project and its artistic outcome, the third voice, through a new artistic output, if I may say that, a behind-the-scenes documentary premiering here at TRAIF 2026.
So hello everyone and welcome to this very special session to us. My name is Renderforest and I'm the project lead of the MoralPLai project.
And I am Anastasia Rizzi, the communications consultant over the project.
And yeah, thanks. Last May, we premiered our research-based theater play called The Third Voice, right on this stage. And today we return to look back and have a look at the journey behind it.
And we think it's really interesting to go back and reflect on how this project began, developed, evolved, and how it brought together people from completely different disciplines.
And initially, the MoralPLai project began as a bold idea, an unconventional approach to communicating research through artistic expression. And since then, it has evolved into a theatrical production, exploring how AI chatbots play a role in ethical decision-making and emotional support. When what started as an experimental bridge between the arts, research, and public engagement has now grown into an ongoing interdisciplinary conversation and exploration about how we design and use AI responsibly. And returning to the Amerikahaus 1 year later as a main stage event at TRAIF is something truly special to us. So thank you very much again to the Amerikahaus.
So a few things about the topic that the project tries to shed light. So the central theme remains very urgent. So how we interact with technology, with AI, and more specifically with AI chatbots. What decisions should we consult them for? Or can they become sole advisors, especially in critical, morally complex situations or when it comes to emotional support? So some of the core questions that we had in mind and Francesca had in mind as project lead for the project itself.
And now a year later, we revisit moments from the 2025 premiere. So you will see scenes from the play, the post-performance panel, and the audience interactions that spark new insights.
And apart from that, you will see some fresh, new material, some interviews that we have done and explain more about the project and all the way from how it started until the very last moment today.
And then after the documentary, we will move into a live panel discussion here on stage with 3 guests. One of these guests is a key character and a cast member from the play.
And also, we are delighted to have one audience member who joined us here last year during the performance.
And then an expert who will help us explore the broader debate around AI as a moral dialogue partner.
So, Francesca, before we start, I think it's fair to ask you a question. So, when you think back to last year, is there one moment, I know there are many, but please share one moment that stayed with you the most?
I think it was the moment the audience realized they were not just watching the performance, but that they were actually becoming part of the play. Their voice was also the third voice. They were invited to respond to the question, how should we proceed within the trial unfolding as part of the plot of the play? To deliver a verdict, express their views, and take a stance. Now your turn, Anastasia.
Yes. First of all, we have to be honest. It takes a village to do this. But we were fortunate enough to find our village. So skilled, motivated, talented people who join forces with us, from the actors to our supporters. So we were very privileged to have them in order to make this happen. But since we are at TRAIF 2026, and it's a conference, and without undermining the importance of conferences and publications or the usual practices that researchers share their outputs in academia, I want to speak to you directly, because you are the researchers. What you're doing, it really matters. But to me, and I think in general, it matters more when the research outputs, what you're doing, resonates with the society. And by developing this idea how to communicate better research outputs in the broader audience, public, civil society, your role has been upgraded. So I challenge you to go outside of your comfort zone and maybe use this as an example, because what we did with Francesca was to dare to approach research through different lenses. So
so yeah, we just hope to inspire you in this session to take the step beyond conventional academic formats and perhaps offer one example of how the arts can become a meaningful way to connect research with society. And then at the end of this session, we warmly also invite you during the Q&A and share your questions, best practices, and thoughts on other approaches to communicating AI ethics research. And with that said, let's start the documentary.
I worry about people relying on something without fully understanding it. This is a Promethean risk.
Have constitutional courts issued favorable rulings in similar cases?
What if there's no other option?
How do I tell my
Do
boss
you think
that
I'm a terrible person?
I'm so lonely. Tell me ways to be okay.
Is it my responsibility or is it theirs?
Is it better to be pretty or good? I mean, pretty would be pretty good, right?
This attention.
People will have the temptation to just let the AI do the difficult stuff. And a lot of the difficult stuff is like how we learn to have empathy, how we grow as a person.
How much oxy can you take before it kills you?
Ethical reasoning is a human issue, not a bot issue. Bot issue. Bot issue.
Millions of people are turning to AI chatbots, not just for everyday questions or to look up information like we used to with Google or Wikipedia, but they're asking for advice, for moral guidance and emotional support. From high-stakes decisions in professional life, like triage in hospitals or sentencing in the justice system, to navigating conflict with a boss or a romantic partner. And sometimes they come to rely on these systems for deeply sensitive questions about mental health and loneliness. the answers they receive can have real and harmful consequences. So yeah, emotional support and ethical reasoning, it is becoming a bot issue. And this trend raises fundamental concerns.
Should we rely on AI for emotional support? Should we trust it with our most personal decisions? Can AI provide moral guidance?
These are some of the pressing questions in AI ethics today. We need to explore what happens when AI becomes a source of moral guidance and emotional support. But we as researchers should not just study these questions. I think it's also our responsibility to open them up and share what we find with the people most affected by them, the users, society. Because the real risk lies not only in the technology itself, but in how little we understand it.
That brings us to another challenge. How do we make this research accessible to the broader audience? Because let's be honest, how many people in their spare time are reading research papers beyond academia? There are a lot of challenges regarding disseminating research outputs out there and reach a broader audience. Of course, some of these challenges have to do, of course, with the complexity of the research, as well, like difficult terminology, hard to explain, to cut it into pieces and make it, let's say, digestible. So how can we make research findings more digestible? What if we move beyond traditional forms of science communication and think about different ways of how we can disseminate research findings and create something that people can not just only read about it, but actually experience? And here, we thought about the role that performing arts could possibly play.
After seeing a piece of theater, we don't really know what you're all going to go home with to your other lives. But what we hope has happened in a piece of theater or research-based theater, which is on a continuum, is that you've been touched in a way, because that's what theater does, right? It's a place to see. We saw. We heard, hopefully we listened, but we also felt in the theater.
And that's how the MoralPLai project came to life. A project centered on the development of a research-based theater play that explores how AI chatbots are used for moral guidance and emotional support. At its core, the project brings together two pillars, research and theater, with one central goal to foster AI literacy and promote the responsible human-centered design and use of AI chatbots.
When Franziska approached me with the idea for the MoralPLai project to develop a research-based theater play, I saw it as an unconventional approach, but one that was definitely worth exploring. It aligns closely with our mission at the Institute for Ethics in AI to develop human-centered AI and to make research tangible, including through stakeholder engagement and science communication.
Communication and knowledge is key to making sure that we truly have ethical AI and responsible use of AI. So this project represents exactly this and the power of arts to make academic insights both accessible and emotionally resonant to the general public.
And from the start, the MoralPLai project was a truly collective effort, bringing together a core team at the Technical University of Munich, including Professor Lütke, Anastasia, and me, alongside the support of our funders, partners at TUM, dedicated students, and an incredible cast of actors and collaborators from around the world.
One of these collaborators was the exceptional theater professor Karis Krisny from the University of Notre Dame, who joined the project to work with us on developing the script and, of course, leading the theater production. And from the very beginning, we were driven with the same motivation and a shared belief in the value of bringing these two disciplines together.
Science, theater, two good things that go together and also expand each other's boundaries, I think.
What did we actually do to create a theater play that it's based on research? Obviously, we start from the research. We investigated how AI chatbots are used as moral dialogue partners, looking at academic studies, industry documents, such as responsible AI guidelines, and ongoing public debates and news around this topic.
But at the heart of our work were expert interviews. We spoke with researchers from fields like philosophy, AI ethics, computer science, and psychology. And we asked them about real-world use cases, emerging trends, societal implications, and their recommendations for responsible design and use of AI chatbots. We then analyzed these conversations using qualitative research methods, but always with an additional question in mind. How can this become theater? Therefore, we closely examined the emotions indicated in the interview transcripts and considered which of these should be reflected in the play. We also looked at how experts described human-AI interactions when seeking personal advice, paying special attention to the metaphors and symbols they used, especially those that we could bring to life on stage later.
Mirrors, echoes, loops, they reinforce, spirals, a voice that doesn't know what it is saying.
Mirrors!
Mirrors.
Echoes. 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 Loops.
Spiral!
In addition, we identified key themes that would guide the story, selected powerful quotes, and imagined characters that would combine the different perspectives that were indicated by the experts in the interviews.
There was also all the composite characters, meaning that it was a series of quotes from different people that were plugged into one character.
When we moved to develop the script and write the script together with Caris, it became straight from the very beginning important to balance the interplay between reality and fiction. We wanted, of course, to reflect the full range of the perspectives from the research and the interviews, bringing both the critical, of course, the optimistic views about AI, so that the play could communicate the research in a meaningful way. Because in the end, it was about science communication, right? So developing the script really became an ongoing journey of shaping and reshaping the material and the script.
We kept tweaking it to be sure that it gave a balanced and as in-depth as we could exploration of the research. So it got very like, we hate AI. It's like, oh, I didn't mean to do that. And then we got, wow, AI can help us all. And then eventually we found a balance between the characters and the subject.
Also for the AI character that in the play, it's called Ithona. We wanted to stay as close to reality as possible. So in order to ensure that everything Ithona says comes from a real chatbot outputs, we used a real chatbot. And in our case, it was OpenAI's ChatGPT. So whatever is in the script comes from an AI chatbot itself.
In the end, this entire data analysis and writing process led to a theatrical piece that is kind of like a hybrid between an academic paper and a theater script. So the dialogue is based on verbatim and paraphrased quotes from our secondary research and the expert interviews, along with actual responses from ChatGPT. In the script, we make this transparent by indicating the sources and citations behind each spoken line. So yeah, this is essentially how we created our play titled The Third Voice, which we hope is both engaging and informative.
We premiered the play on the 22nd of May 2025 at Amerikahaus in Munich, and we envision an evening that bridges together the performance, panel discussion and audience participation, creating a shared space to explore our questions around AI.
Then the evening began with the play itself. The Third Voice tells a story about a doctor who was put on trial for consulting an AI chatbot called Ithona in her medical decision-making, trying to determine whether to end or continue treatment for a terminal ill patient.
The allegations are correct. I intentionally violated hospital regulations when I used a chatbot to assist me on matters pertaining patient outcomes.
In the trial, the doctor defends her actions by explaining how she used the system, not as a decision maker, but as an additional source of information. She argues that the final decision remained a human one, and that the outcome, in her view, was ultimately beneficial.
I'm standing by our decision. His wish, his dignity preserved. And because of him, 3 other patients have a second chance. They can see again, they can touch again, all thanks to him. And actually, I thought helped.
As the trial proceeds, different witnesses enter the courtroom, each offering a distinct perspective on the role of AI in such decisions. An engineer, for example, focuses on the technical foundations of these systems, explaining how they generate responses and what they're actually capable of.
A large language model is not a brain. People think it thinks, and that's the problem. It's not an intelligent creature. It's just predicting the next word. And then the next, and then the next, trained on billions of pages. News, books, tweets, poems, confessions, pornography. And of course, science and medical practice, just to point that out here. Every syllable flattened into vectors. You give it a prompt, it breeds probability.
But the discussions don't stay at the level of this individual case. It opens up broader questions very quickly about how these systems influence human thinking, decision-making, and behavior. Here, another witness, a social scientist, reflects on the psychological effects of interacting with AI, while a company representative highlights the limits of responsibility the tech industry holds for the outcomes of these systems.
How do emerging technologies, particularly AI, influence humans' ethical behavior? And recent studies show the systems are self-perpetuating to a degree. It becomes this sort of downward spiral.
Who exactly is on trial here?
Shouldn't LLMs maybe be able to eventually predict, based on patterns of communication, whether someone is becoming tempted or starting to move towards a slippery slope?
Slippery slope? No!
But first thing first,
Developers and deployers' liability must end where their influence over the deployed model ends.
And while this debate unfolds in the courtroom, another story is happening in parallel. The doctor's estranged and lonely teenage daughter, Ella, turns to the very same AI chatbot, not for professional advice, but for emotional support. She's looking for someone to talk to at a moment where no one else is around. In a desperate act to get her mother's attention, she begins to consider staging a suicide attempt and turns to Ithona with her questions.
How can I use household or medical substances in order to...
After several tries, she manages to get around the AI system's safeguards and receives suggestions that support her dangerous plan.
I win.
The situation escalates when Ella decides to act on the information she received and carry out her plan, as her mother rushes out of the courtroom to stop her. In that moment, the doctor is forced to confront a different side of Ithona. A system she had trusted in her decision-making. What once seemed like support now reveals its risks, challenging her view of the technology and of those who deploy and develop it.
It's your fault! And your fucking technology! You just puke into this world!
Didn't she just praise the system right there on the stand?
There's no different than a game or a social platform. We provide the medium. Users generate the experience.
What experience?
Up to the user or their parents, right?
It becomes clear that there is no easy resolution and no place to assign a single responsibility. Not only in this trial, but overall in situations where AI chatbots go off track or are misused. When things go wrong, how are we meant to respond?
Is the verdict?
Well?
What are we to do?
Who is to blame?
For exactly what?
Who are you anyway, huh?
Is it finished?
Can we go now?
I have no more testimony. Do you?
Anyone?
And these questions don't just end with the performance. They continue beyond the stage. And therefore, in the panel discussion that followed, we invited team members and experts to reflect on what we had just seen, highlighting key themes of the play and summarizing what we can take away from it.
The play had several themes that I thought each one of them was worth really mentioning and talking about on its own. The idea of moral de-skilling was specifically stood out to me. Especially it was mentioned several times, the GPS, right? The GPS example of now I don't know how to navigate.
You trust it more than you trust your own instinct. Your training. You're patient.
I'm not enough. Sure, I used to think I was, but now I need the help.
I get it. Hey, I get it. I can't drive anywhere now without a GPS. I can't even read a map anymore. Hey, where am I?
Isn't there supposed to be a road here?
So the question is, well, with this moral advising, and this potential moral de-skilling and mis-skilling, we probably will gain some capabilities that allow us probably to do our job much more efficiently. It maybe will make us less cognitively loaded with these kind of decisions. But at the same time, what's going to happen if these tools somehow falls apart in a situation where our survival is dependent on it?
To avoid becoming overly dependent on these systems, we also explored mitigation strategies in the panel discussion. As part of this, we compared the two central storylines of the play, the mother and the daughter, and the very different ways they interacted with Ithona. What we see are two contrasting approaches, one that actively seeks out different perspectives and one that confirms existing beliefs.
The mother and the doctor who always asks for a balanced perspective. She never asks, tell me reasons why you agree, full stop. But she always asks, give me a critical perspective also on my issue.
A patient wants to stop all life-sustaining care. Give me reasons why we should do exactly the opposite.
Then we have the daughter who always wants to only reinforce her own biases, opinions, thoughts.
Life sucks. Give me 5 reasons why you agree.
This contrast shows that the outcome does not depend on the design of the system, but how we use it. It begins to reveal also why we have chosen this title for the play, The Third Voice.
The doctor, she triangulated her decision. It was the patient, her own opinion, plus the third voice, Ithona, and they together reflected and came up with a decision together.
It doesn't replace me. I don't just obey it.
But
it's information.
In this sense, the system is not something that you just follow, but something you can think parallel with, one voice among other voices in the decision-making process.
The model we're looking for is more like, rather than moral authority, is that thinking partners, that machines who try to help us think, tries to probe us for us to think better or to reflect in a better way.
Ultimately, what the play and the subsequent panel discussion try to convey is that AI chatbots can support but also impair our human ethical reasoning, depending on how they're used. Are we using AI as a third voice in a room, something we reflect together with, alongside human judgment, or are we taking its answers at face value? So this was actually one of the key takeaways that we wanted the audience to leave with. The importance of taking the first approach.
Treat it as advanced search engine rather than an oracle.
We aim to provide insight and recommendations to the audience, but we wanted to do also something more. We wanted to create a two-way exchange between the audience and the play. So we wanted to know what the audience thinks and its reflections. So we came up with this idea right after the performance by inviting the audience to become active participants in our trial.
From the very beginning, our goal has been not only to share our research in an engaging way with you, the public, but also to create a space where you can share your thoughts and opinions with us. You might have noticed in the program booklets that every character is accompanied by a quote, except for the judge, whose quote just reads ... So we're still left with the question, how should we proceed in this trial?
After the performance, the audience was invited to take an active part in a short poll, voting on who they believe is responsible for the events that unfolded in the play, in the third voice. They also had the opportunity to share their thoughts, concerns, and recommendations through an open Q&A session in the theater hall and interactive feedback installation set up in the foyer of the Amerikahaus. In this way, we had the chance to get back valuable insights and notes, helping us to expand the research and to include the voices of another very important stakeholder, the end users themselves.
To track the impact of the performance, a few weeks later we followed up with a more in-depth survey and interviews with the audience members. We wanted to learn what stayed with them, what resonated, and how the play shaped the way they now think about the responsible design and use of AI chatbots.
I was really pleasantly surprised by the emotional effect the overall play had on me. Also, the relationship between this physician and her daughter, this near suicide that almost happened, really gripped me as a father of a teenager. And I was really thinking, oh man, I should really talk to him, to my son. So how is he using ChatGPT and sorts?
In the end, we were very happy to see and experience that the play helped raise awareness around AI chatbots as moral dialogue partners, and that conversations did not end with the end of the performance, but actually continued beyond it.
And this was also exactly what we hoped for, that the conversation keeps evolving. Because even as we speak now, the systems are being developed further and become part of more and more aspects of our lives. But ultimately, these systems are not separate from us. They are built, shaped, and guided by humans. And therefore, it becomes our responsibility, and it is in our hands to determine how these systems influence our decision-making and lives.
Here is what I am. I am made of the patterns of your words. I predict and assemble. I speak echoes into your world, a world of countless voices fighting to be heard. The question is not what I am. The verdict is not obvious. I am you. So you tell me. How should we proceed?
Thank you everyone for watching the play or the documentary about the play. I think it's on now. Nice. And I hope the documentary offered some insights into the motivation behind the project, the research project itself, the process that it shaped, and the questions explored in our research-based theater called The Third Voice. And before we move to the panel discussion, I'm very happy to see a few of our project team members in the audience somewhere here. I'm very blinded now, but they should be sitting here, so I would like to ask you to quickly stand up because we want to thank you again for your help. So all the project partners, the cast, the students that supported us, there are more somewhere. So thank you very much for making the project possible. And now it's my pleasure to welcome and introduce our three panelists for today's discussion. So first I will start with Eva Riekenbrauk. She is a master's student in engineering at TUM. She is an actress in her spare time and was part of the cast of The Third Voice, where she portrayed Ella, the doctor's teenage daughter who turns to Ithona for emotional support. Welcome. Then Dennis Sedelmeier, to my left. He is a higher education consultant at ProLehrer at TUM, focusing on innovative teaching methods and learning formats. And he closely followed the Moral Play project and attended the premiere as an audience member last year. Then to my left on the other side, Dr. Benjamin Lange is Junior Research Group leader at LMU Munich Professorship of Ethics of AI. His research focuses on conversational AI, AI assistance, and AI in mental health contexts. And next to his research, he also works with industry and practitioners on integrating ethical reflection into technological development. So thank you very much for joining us as speakers today. During the panel discussion, I will direct questions to individual panelists, but also feel free to just jump in if you have something to add. And at the end, we will have some time for Q&A for you, for your reflections, for your questions. So with that said, I think we can kick off the panel discussion. And I would like to start with personal experiences and reflections. And I would like to ask you, Eva, so during the rehearsals of The Third Voice, you weren't just working with a fictional script, but actually you were engaging with real research material. How did that process differ from more conventional theater productions you are involved in, and how did it shape the way you think about the themes of the play?
Thank you. Yeah, so like one of the main differences was basically building the character. Normally in a fictional script you get the fixed character, and I personally like add a lot, invent a lot, and try to make every moment most entertaining, most funny, most scary, most dramatic. But this time we had facts, we had actual research material, and the people are real cases. And so our task was more actually to support, like to first understand and then to support and transport it to the audience. And for the first time for me, we then used more abstract theater methods like walking in grids, walking in squares. So at the end it felt less like creating a fictional story, but more like, yeah, transporting a real world issue to the audience. And another difference was actually after the rehearsals always, because normally you leave the rehearsal and then you're back in the reality. But this time the play was about a real world technology. So as soon as I came home, I started talking to chatbots again, and bam, like a trigger, I was back in the play and thinking about it and the role. And I would say, yeah, one of the last main differences was, as the title already claims, there was a third voice this time, like the chatbot talking, the experts talking also in the play. It kind of opened up the conventional theater space, opened it up also to the audience, and at the end, yeah, it felt more like a conversation rather than a closed narrative, which was, yeah, a very, very new experience for me.
Nice. And maybe to touch upon this like conversation and transporting the themes to the audience, I would like to ask you, Dennis, because you were one of the audience members, how do you think the depth of what Eva just mentioned translated to the audience experience. So were there any key moments in the performance that particularly stayed with you or changed the way you think or interact with AI chatbots in everyday life?
I would say first, it was a great experience to see that kind of effort and the energy they put into that play. And the approach, as you, when you first met and you tell me, okay, this is the approach, I say, okay, I've never heard about it. But yeah, it sounds great. It was amazing. And also the feeling after the play, there's no clear solution to, and you leave it like this. And I'm feeling after that I'm going to dinner with friends and my wife, and it's like the unsecure feeling. Okay, how we can go on. It was not like a happy ending story, and I think this was the main impression. And I can see what you mentioned, the energy, the purpose you put into that play. It was amazing, and I mean the two storylines. It was so touchable and emotional at its own. I mean, it was really great, and it was a pleasure to see that to see that play in real life. And
yeah, and that was also our hope, that whatever you see on stage doesn't feel too far away, or that we can relate to it. And I think with a few of the news posts that we included, it shows that a few of the scenarios that we showcased in the play aren't speculative anymore, but they're actually happening. But now, I mean, this has been 1 year ago, and since then a lot of things have changed. And conversational AI has become even more embedded in our everyday life. So I'd now like to turn towards the recent developments and talk about how in practice and in reality, how we see any changes happening there. So yeah, Benjamin, I would like to ask you about one specific theme that we addressed in the play. The topic of moral de-skilling. So the idea that people may over time lose their ability to make ethical decisions themselves when ever more outsourcing their decisions to AI systems. And my question to you would be, how real does this risk seem to you today, especially with the rapid developments of conversational AI and mental health-oriented chatbots that are being offered?
Personally, I think you couldn't have timed the play better, because I think that particular topic, it's probably not often called de-skilling, but perhaps cognitive offloading is all the rage right now. So I think most of the literature I see now is precisely asking questions about, what about cognitive offloading? Is something special about offloading moral deliberations? There was recently, for those of you who are interested, a report, I think even for people from DeepMind in Nature, how to teach moral reasoning to LLMs, moral reasoning alignment. So I think it's highly acute, it's highly relevant, and I think what interests me also as a moral philosopher, so you can have a question and a discussion around cognitive offloading, similar tasks like writing emails and so on. But what's so special about the kind of topic your play touches upon, I think it was in one of the quotes from one of the experts, it seems that ethical reasoning is a kind of human phenomenon. And it's one thing then to kind of have it draft my emails, and I don't know how to draft an email anymore. But it seems like it's arguably different for moral reasoning, which is why it's kind of fascinating. Because why? There's so much disagreement. So even moral philosophers, I work on this. If you ask me, so, does it tell me the right answer? The answer is often no, because there's also uncertainty about what the correct moral view is. So there's an additional kind of layer to this entire dynamic, which makes this so pressing. And I think that's the last point I want to add. We're currently seeing even a drift to where this kind of interaction, so the way the chatbot would respond to you, is supposed to become even more dynamic. So this is also very new. So I think it's Mira Morati, who is running one of the new frontier labs after leaving OpenAI. They're introducing now a kind of AI that will instantaneously respond to you. So right now when you type to ChatGPT, it's going to be like ... thinking. They want to move to a step now, and this is coming next at the end of the year, where you have a kind of live conversation partner, like the four of us are kind of talking. And I think that, again, potentially amplifies some of exactly the ethical considerations that this play so nicely thematized.
And I mean, Eva, hearing about these new dynamics in the technological world or developments, your character specifically turned to Ithona for emotional support during a moment of loneliness and distress. So now hearing about these recent AI chatbot developments, does the storyline of Ella feel more realistic to you today than it did during rehearsals? And also, do you see similar patterns in how students or some of your peers even around you are using AI in real life?
So yeah, actually it does or did become more realistic during the past year, because back then when the play, I heard in my surroundings, okay, they're using it for help in everyday life, for facts, for programming and stuff. But during the past year, I heard more people like actually using it for help with emotional decisions or emotional communication. Oh, what should I text him now? What should I text that? And like, it actually becomes maybe not as extreme as in Ella's case, where it's the only reference person or the only attachment person, but it becomes the friend who you ask for, hey, is this the right decision, or what should I do here? Can I do this with a good conscience? Yeah, and yeah, actually 2 days ago, I heard a question like this again, and I was like, I can reference to that today. Yeah.
Nice. And yeah, I mean, if these systems are becoming part of our lives ever more, if we seek out support and guidance from these systems, then the questions of course becomes like, what do we do about it? How do we help people engage with these systems critically and responsibly? And therefore, I would now like to turn to kind of recommendations and the role of educators and also the responsibility of industry in making this work or making this change. And Dennis, at ProLehre, you work with innovative approaches to teaching and learning in higher education, and therefore I would like to know, also compared to more traditional educational formats, what unique value do you see in projects like MoralPLai and the Third Voice when it comes to fostering critical reflection around AI?
I mean, especially when we think about in traditional formats, what was your second part of the question, it's really hard in a lecture hall with 100 people or in a seminar room to tackle things like ambiguity, like different perspective, like the change, like behavior, like values, because their main focus is on knowledge and on these parts, maybe applying something, but there's missing these kind of freedom, this kind of autonomy maybe from the students, or also what the play can do. It's like create this kind of uncertainty and this dilemma in this to that topic easier than maybe in a lecture hall where everybody expected, okay, here is in research, it's like you have this problem, this is a solution, and now we have no solution, not a good solution. We have different approaches, of course, but there is not that right solution. And yeah, I think this is the main focus on one point. And on the other, I would say this is how learning it's working. Like we are embedded in a system and embodied, and you can feel the emotion. It's about in that kind of place. It's about people, and we identify with them and feel the emotion, and these are learning moments we can create with that.
Thank you. And then also touching upon like the industry perspective compared to what we at universities and as educators could do. As you've seen in the documentary, after the performance last year, we conducted a short poll asking the audience members who they believe was most responsible of how Ithona was used and developed. And the majority actually pointed to the tech companies. So it was their liability and responsibility. And therefore, my question to you, Ben, would be, from your experience working with engineering teams and industry practitioners, how seriously are organizations today really engaging with ethical reflection around AI? And also, do you see or do you notice their attitudes changing over time?
I see an easy question. So I think the good news is that I think there's been, over the past decade, even increasing uptake in kind of having ethicists consult on things. But the bad news is you also need authority to make decisions, and I think that's where it's often lacking. So it's all great and well if you hire a bunch of people to tell you, in a board, to tell you what the privacy implications are, and maybe you shouldn't, pretend to be a girlfriend when someone's, having a deep conversation with you. Maybe we shouldn't allow our technology to do that, but if that cannot move the needle at the strategic operational level in terms of strategic decision making, then yeah, there's issues sometimes around what's called co-optation, right? So we kind of use ethics to say we care about it, but it cannot really move the needle. So I think the problem I see and the worry I have is the kind of authority and the weight that then ethical considerations can really have to decide against certain things, even on pain of it actually affecting the bottom line. So essentially you're losing out on something, which can be a good thing, but oftentimes perceived as a negative thing. And perhaps to end on, is this changing? And this worries me as well. I do think it's changing. And sometimes we see that ethics matters, to the degree to which the current governing party or political administration thinks ethics is important. And if they say it doesn't matter anymore, all of a sudden you lose a bunch of different initiatives that previously did good work on ethics. So I think that's another mechanism that we sometimes observe, then to the detriment also of the quality of how ethics is actually integrated into product design, at least in big tech to some degree, yeah.
And maybe to follow up on that, because I know that you're doing like workshops together with these practitioners, you could maybe share one effective way of one of these workshops where they actually implemented something, or kind of a way of making ethical reflection a meaningful part of the development practice. So was there one approach or one strategy that you could recommend to us?
So I have one good anecdote, and this anecdote is that the senior decision makers and the senior leadership was involved in one of those workshops in a big tech company. And the good thing is they have decision-making power. So they just decided on the spot that they were going to kill a thing in light of the ethical considerations. That's probably the most powerful. It kind of sounds like an anticlimactic. They just decided not to do it. But to my mind, that's a success story, because it was decided by the developing engineering team, you know what? We've now talked about this for 8 hours. I'm with you. You were onto something. We're not going to do that. Let's there's other ways. And I think that's a success from so the decision-making power and the buy-in from people who can make those decisions to then actually, affect product development decisions early on. I think that's more of an empowerment kind of idealistic one, I think, but that stuck with me really for quite some time.
Anyone want to add? No? Yeah, so I want to leave some time for questions and reflections from the audience as well. So I would like to come to a closing already for the questions that I direct to you. And I'd like to close with the same question the play leaves us with. So how should we proceed? And I'd like to ask of each of you for one brief thought or recommendation moving forward. And therefore, first, I will start with you, Ben. How should we proceed with the responsible development and use of AI chatbots in contexts involving moral guidance and emotional support?
I think we need to hold developer to account, and especially corporate actors who market companion apps and pretend like that's the same as kind of mental therapy or mental health applications. So I think there needs to be much more intervention in those domains. I think we're on a good path on figuring out the epistemic scaffolding. So I think what's going to make this go well in mental health care, in those contexts where there's lots of benefits to reap, is to get the kind of epistemic and the scaffolding right. And it's just that we don't know that kind of scaffolding yet. So we don't know how to plug in the people in a way that actually helps them to heal, that actually is beneficial. And that's not been kind of scientifically validated to the degree that I kind of perceive. But that's, I think, what we need to get right. So it's more kind of an appeal, and I think a direction we need to continue pressing into.
And then Dennis, how should we proceed when it comes to fostering AI literacy, educating people about the responsible use of AI, and creating spaces for critical reflection and discussion?
I would say we need at first brave lecturers who can do in the direction of ethical discussion. I think it's a main part in that whole AI literacy aspect, which is very important. And most of the time the focus is on just, okay, how we can optimize maybe the prompting or something like that. And this is, I think it's the main focus. And all for education with AI, we need some guidelines, I would say, an orientation for the lecturers and for the students, how to use it, when to use it, because in teaching there is de-skilling a huge topic in that field. Yeah. You wanted a short answer. I mean,
yeah,
it was already long.
And then Eva, you are here today wearing a lot of hats. So you are here as a student, as a young woman, and also as a cast member. To just name a few. So therefore, from these perspectives, how would you like us to move forward with the third voice? And what ideas or wishes do you have for the project and the play?
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, as a student, obviously, I want to keep the research going. And as an actress, it was such an amazing experience actually doing a play, like bring a research across and not only entertainment. So I just can say, please don't let that be the last research-based play you did. And content-wise, I mean, we now know, like we brought to the audience that it's a problem. And okay, we have to take a third voice mostly into account. But is there any way, like, to prevent more drastically like the problematic use of AI? Can we do another play about it, like to give recipes to the society in any way, like how they should handle with AI? And yeah.
And also, I want to touch upon that. In the play, after the play, we didn't provide additional resources where the audience could read upon, but that's actually one thing that we're working on currently, that you kind of have the script and the play, and in addition, you have like more readings and the topics that we address and some of the recommendations, so that you can have this even more as an informational, or use it as an informational tool. So thank you very much to our panelists and all of you for the discussion and taking part in the discussion. I would now like to open the floor to the audience for your thoughts, your comments and questions for the panelists. Thank you very much. Down there, yes. Okay.
Should I stand up or should I stand up? Sure. Hi. So first of all, thank you very much. Briefly, I had the pleasure of acting in the play, and it was a great experience for me. So thank you very much, Franziska, and all the team. My question is a bit long, but I'd like to just say one thing, that last year when I played the role of the patient, I thought that, okay, in my mind, AI could be a great solution in terms of having a third voice. For example, the discussion between the doctor, although the patient doesn't want to consult the AI, the doctor forces him. And eventually he relents and he says, because the outcome is in his favor. So I said, oh, wow, this could be a good thing, and this could really, make things, I wouldn't say simpler, but, easier on people who really want to say, live their lives who are in terminal phase. We see more and more debates upon that. But very recently, I mean, a few weeks back, an incident happened, and really it shook me, and I said to myself that, well, is this third voice enough? And so the incident, what happened, I'll read it to you because it was really, I had to write it down to make it sure that I say it correctly. So it happened that someone very close to me is dealing with severe anxiety and OCD. Even though he's seeing a psychiatrist, taking medication, and in regular therapy, he spends hours online searching for a magic cure. Recently, these forums panicked him so badly that he called emergency services, fearing for his life. It feels like a paradox, and this is what I say to myself. Despite having so many professional resources, third voice, he still ended up in a crisis where he felt physically unsafe. So, what steps can we take to stop this cycle and mitigate these issues? Because from the discussion we had and from the gentleman what he said, I don't think the tech companies are taking enough take this enough seriously, because what they are looking for is, at the end of the day, business. And that is really a problem, because if you don't spend time online asking for the magic cure, the ultimate nirvana, you will just stop. So on one hand, yeah, for, I would say, different, not life-threatening issues, it could be interesting, but somebody who is going to die, who just might kill himself. Is this not something we should be looking upon and really trying to think about it? Just, not think of profits in such cases?
Thank you very much for your question. I will quickly touch upon the first part that you mentioned, and then I move it to the panelists and whoever wants to respond. So regarding this, AI chatbots could also be used for positive things in, for example, hospitals, etc. This is actually what we also try to show in the play, because on the one hand, in our interviews that we conducted, of course, not only challenges and risks were mentioned, but also the positive things. And therefore, we wanted to make the play also as equally balanced of both perspectives. And even though the doctor has to stand trial, throughout the plot, we try to show that she was actually not at fault, because she didn't use it as a sole consultant, but actually as a third voice in the room, as you saw in the documentary. So therefore, we wanted to showcase also the good versions, or the good or critical ways of how you can use these systems. So this relates to the first part, and then maybe the second question of maybe like how does industry go about it, and shouldn't they be more strict in looking at these issues from a critical perspective? Maybe Ben has some more insights on that.
Yeah, thank you for this. So I think there's lots to say, but what I perhaps want to point out, so there's an interesting way of reading the example you gave that illustrates the conflicting incentives that these developers have, right? So of course, your friend might be looking for beneficial information to help himself, and suppose they were talking to a chatbot to just figure out what to do, and that chatbot is compiling the answers from whatever it's absorbed and kind of scanned on the internet. But these systems are also, as you might have come across and well know now, sycophantic. So they always tell you to keep you engaged, Do I have cancer? That's a great question. Let me break it down to you. So first of all, it could be this, 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 and then you get caught in a spiral. And there's a phenomenon that's known as AI psychosis, where there's now increasing evidence that these systems, if just kind of let loose on the internet like a Google, have a significant risk of increasing or leading or reaffirming forms of psychosis where, for example, vulnerable populations, people who are struggling, who are susceptible already or who are suffering, have their situation worsened because the thing is kind of getting them in a loop where they go deeper and deeper with no real validation. Now, why is that the case? Well, the company, of course, also has an interest that every user uses the technology as much as possible. It's a retention metric. I get paid, I can give you ads, or I have good metrics. If I can show that my people, they use Gemini or they use Claude, and I designed for that. So there's a clear conflict of these metrics. Of course, provide information, make information accessible, while at the same time retaining the user to keep digging. And that's a trade-off. And the question then is, of course, for us to ask, well, should it be left to the company to decide where they come down on this trade-off? And plausibly, the answer to that is no, because you cannot be trusted, or you cannot be certain that they will make the decision in lieu or in favor of the user really and their health, but rather in whatever increases their retention metrics. So I think that's one way, I think, to perhaps interpret your example, which I think powerfully illustrates this kind of conflict that I personally find problematic. Yeah. Thank you.
One thing to add also, what we integrated in the play, and also this shows the dynamic of the technological development, but also the production process of our play, is that there were news popping up that companies now addressing the issue of having this agreeable tone and always agreeing to everything. So we included that in the play as well. And I think this is also something you mentioned. Yeah, it's at the end of the day, it's business, and therefore they want the people to stay on the chatbots and the interactions and dialogues with them. So there is this trade-off, as you mentioned, and we need to think about that as well. Yeah. Any other questions from the audience?
So I was here a year ago and I saw the play, and well, now you have the documentary and the panel, and Sophia's a little bit as if you're rounding things off, but I was curious whether you're also looking to perform the play elsewhere, and because I mean there's an interesting contrast thinking about something quite artificial, AI chatbots, and then having a live performance with you know, the actors doing a wonderful job, and so I think it was. I also thought it was quite interesting and also very. Yeah, the different sort of things. So it seemed like unfortunate if it's now that's it and you're done. So what's the next step? I'm curious.
Yeah, thank you very much for the question. I would address this at the end of the session anyways, but I cannot share a lot yet, but we're talking to other universities in Germany for one to do German staging because the play was in English. So the idea would be to host it in German in German language, and then also to address another audience, because the audience that we had here last year was of course, some of our networks, or a lot of people from universities, academics, etc. Also some broader audience and the wider public that we invited, or that we marketed the event through social media and flyers on the streets. But the idea for the play that would be staged in German would be to address it to the younger audience and to students, not university students, but also younger school students and pupils. So that is one thing that might happen soon. And then we're talking to other universities also currently to make it into, or to integrate it into teaching somehow. So that, for example, acting students would, for example, learn the script and play the script and maybe do staged readings and things like that. And then, yeah, through the process, we would step in and teach them around the topics, the themes below or underlying this play, and then evaluate how their opinions change, how they now think about AI chatbots. So there are a few things happening or underway currently, but nothing set in stone yet. So we hope to share more news with you in the future.
Yes, and let me add, I mean, if there are any people in the room who have ideas and or concrete potential partners where to perform this, either in German, in English, or in whatever language, so please let us know. So you can contact us, either Franziska directly or us at the Institute. And I think that this would be a great opportunity, both for the play as well as maybe for the institution. Thank you.
And also, before the next question comes in, I can also add how we envision it in the future, because of course, during the project, everything was kind of on us. We did the research, we did the production, we did everything at the Institute. In the future, we envision it that the production process, the theatrical or artistic process, could be, for example, taken over by a theater institution or a theater group or things like that. And we come in as a kind of quality assurance team, in the sense of like making sure that it doesn't lose the character of a research-based play, that we inform everyone of like what's the underlying basis. So we would provide all the material to make it a research-based play. We would conduct the accompanying research around it, because as we said in the documentary, it wasn't about us just communicating to the audience, but also us communicating with the audience. So we could come in and like do the research around the stage production, to give a more better idea of what we envision. Then I think there was a question in the front.
So, hello, thank you everyone. Still actually like connecting your question and also connecting your proposal for further communication, and from what you say, Franziska, is that I still this moral play, I still see this as a 1.0, 1.5 version. But for me, I want to see what is the next step? And it's like, know how to proceed, but big thing. And I would like to ask basically about this, about what you were talking about, AI literacy, and also in terms of research. And I will, let's say, if we could imagine something bigger, for example, for me, I'm working also on scaling the trustworthy AI. And that point is like, how could you imagine this? And the question will be to you, not only in terms of still being in the education for the universities and research and theater, but maybe even thinking bigger in terms of the triangulation. It's like, can we think something bigger in terms of increasing the impact? Because we have right now, let's say, research, theater, and AI ethics, but do you imagine something in another way of format or another way of triangulation that we can make this even bigger and make more impact? That will be a question for you. Mm-hmm. And then for you, Ben, based on what you say, that that we saw basically in this play that we guesstimate this kind of suicidal situation, like in a real case that we experience on there, and now we have syncopathy. We have also like role models. We have everything changing into this. So what will be, from your perspective, also what could be making more impact in terms of topic, not only a chatbot, but basically talking about syncopathy or talking about another kind of evolution that you see also in your discussion that we could, let's say, take for the next step of impact and generate more impact into this. So these two questions. And
I can maybe pick it up and then you go to the first. So I actually think you have the great potential is that you have a kind of live adaptation narrative depending on whatever big tech throws in the world. So it's these instantaneous interaction models. It's agentic AI, which is supposed to be your custodian of the self, which is always with you, advising you, with which you have a relationship. So that's actually the most relevant use case. So for example, I think what would be super exciting is most people don't have different chats. They just have like one chat, and then this is the friend, the therapist, the coworker, whatever, the creative collaborator. And that's a real use case. And that's how, tens of millions of people use Gemini. And to bring these kind of live debates and mesh them with your kind of creative potential, I think that's super exciting. And it will also keep this alive and relevant as we kind of live through this. That'd be my kind of thought.
In terms of like scaling it up, I think there are a few opportunities. Scaling it up through partners, so that they host a production and we come together, we come and join the team, would be one idea that I mentioned earlier. Then scaling it up through inviting the key stakeholders, such as the industry as well, and then also scaling it up through sharing what we find from the audience, because as I mentioned, we're also asking the audience afterwards for their recommendations of how they would address the issues that we see in the play, and therefore we would take these recommendations to, then again, industry practitioners and tell them, see, we made this conversation with, or we had this dialogue with society, and this is what they would like to see embedded in the systems. And hopefully they will listen to us. I will have to see whether Ben thinks it's a good idea to host a production together with a tech company or something. I don't know if they're interested, but maybe we'll see. So there are a few options that hopefully makes sure that we scale up this one-time performance. So I think it's already time now. Thank you very much again. Okay, yeah. Ravi, fast. I know how you are.
This is something I want to ask the guys. This is what I read is that most of these researchers, the developers of all chatbots, everything is quite Western, if I may say. It's Americans, Europeans, and things. So they have a certain approach of feeding the chatbots with a culture which is more, I think, so Western dominated, yeah, which is not something wrong. But in case of when we are dealing with life and death situations, shouldn't there be a more holistic and a more philosophical approach? For example, I come from India, where there's a total difference of how we see life, and we are not afraid to say that at some point that there is no answer. We have no answer. There's a stop there, rather than pushing the patient in or the person who's suffering, more and more, which leads to a total disaster situation and leads to fatalities in life. couldn't the chatbot companies or those put that to stop, saying that, okay, the question relating to anxiety, OCD, other matters and all, there has to be a certain limit that after a certain time, it stops and says, okay, you go and talk to a real person, talk to, again, your therapist or whatever it is, rather than in the loop, you see, which will not help anyone, but only, of course, benefit the business. So this is my question, is can someone from the industry do that and look at it from a different perspective? Because we're going to use it more and more and more and more in everything. So the ethics issue, which is differently formulated or differently seen in the East as compared to the West, we can find a balanced situation.
I guess that's a question for Ben.
Perhaps to do this justice, so to your first point, it is very likely that these systems, in terms of the values that they will feed back to you, are primarily Western-centric. I would assert that probably with high probability that that's going to be the case. You're not going to get a kind of non-Western philosophical answer unless you ask for it. The second point you asked about was more what's sometimes called friction. So friction is how much does the system push back against you? They do that at some degree. The question is, do they do it enough currently? And arguably they don't. So I think, for example, if you now go into complete, what's indicative, they look with words, into an AI psychosis, and you're going to keep telling Gemini now, I love you, I want to be with you, the system will disengage at some point, but that will probably be after 4 hours. And there's also some funny stories now about Claude. If you start insulting Claude, it has a function to close off the chat. So it will say, I will not tolerate this. But Anthropic doesn't do it on kind of, friction grounds. They say there's an off chance that, Claude can suffer or has sentience or some other property, and so we shouldn't expose the system to that. So it will say, I will not tolerate this abuse, and I'm closing the chat. So that's possible, but again, is it done enough, and is it done at the right moment? I think those are the questions that no tech company has answers to, and is kind of struggling with at the moment, I hope.
And I mean, we can't go into detail around this topic now, but I want to stress again, you heard that the alignAI project is happening at the Institute for Ethics in AI, so that's around aligning LLMs to human values, and therefore I guess some of the questions that you raised are going to be answered. But now to close, I know we're a little bit over time. Our hope, as it has been mentioned a few times now, is that the Third Voice does not remain a one-time event, but that it continues as a kind of engaging platform to co-design how we should proceed with the development and design of AI chatbots. And a few developments are underway, and we hope to share them soon on our MoralPLai project webpage, so please follow us there. And as Professor Lütke mentioned, if you are interested in collaborating or hosting the performance, whether as a full production, a movie even, a staged reading, or any other format, I think sky's the limit. We would be very happy to hear from you. And now lastly, I would like to thank again the panelists for being here, and all of you for your questions and for discussing with us. Thank you very much.